Welcome everybody to another episode of the Phenomenal Student Podcast. In this particular segment, we're going to be having phenomenal conversation with Mr. Short. I'm going to be interviewing a friend, a former coworker, and a new assistant principal in Tyler ISD, Christopher Reece. Chris, how you doing?
Hey, what's going on, man? Okay.
Everything's good. So we're gonna start. Of course, with teacher interviews, it's kind of unorthodox because it seems like the only people that get interviewed are experts for some reason when you go on a lot of podcasts and things like this. But I kind of want to come with a different angle to start off my podcast. Everyone, for one, I wanted to interview a lot of people that were connected to me first, so y'all could build that background information to myself. And then there was a lot of people that have been important to my journey that I feel are phenomenal educators that are on the rise and people that you should know about, because it isn't all about who gets paid to share their opinions that and methodologies or whatever you want to call it, that people don't even end up using half the time. So we'll get into, as I start off, even with my other sports podcast. Kris, tell me, or Mr. Reece, tell me, why did you decide to become a teacher?
And actually for me, it kind of happened by accident. Like I said, I was going into my senior year at Prairie View, and of course my bachelor degree is in electrical engineering. But going into that senior year, like on my birthday, I got into a real bad car accident. So that left me kind of in the hospital for a while, doing rehab, and that happened at the end of my junior year, and then I would be going into my senior year next year. So I took the whole summer rehab, healed. I was able to come back and be on campus with a walker by that fall.
Oh, wow.
Yeah, I was
across. Was that guy on campus? I know that cool point's gone.
Because it was my senior year, so I could not. I had to stay on schedule. Okay, I wanted to graduate. I was not going to let anything stop me from doing that. So for that reason, I had a walker like an old man going across Prairie View's campus, getting from class to class, and but during that time, I also had to work too. So that's when I kind of stumbled upon working in group homes. And the first group home that I ever worked in was called Reach Unlimited. It was a house called Mueller House, and it was 9 guys, and 6 of them had jobs, and I was there to manage the house on certain days. And it was that point in time where I really kind of fell in love with, like, I guess, the special ed community. So the actual director of their learning center her name is Lauren Black, and she used to be the director at the Carlton Center. Did you know that? So
Connection.
she called me yeah. It's funny how, God lays it out for you. But she actually called me in her office one day, and she's like, "You need to go into the school district." And I was like, basically like, "Yes, ma'am," because I respected her. Like, she had her perspective, her viewpoint, her love for what she did and does. I respected it, and she was always cool with me. So she just suggested I go into teaching, go in as a pair, feel it out, see how it goes. And that's what I did. The next school year, that would be 2009, when I first entered into any school district as a paraprofessional at South Springs High School. So from that point, I had started because like I said, my degree is in electrical engineering. So I started my alternative certification program for Texas teachers. Got through with that, and the rest was history. That was the launch of my educational career.
So talk about some of the things you learned. I spent 2 years as a paraprofessional myself at the Carlton Center. We worked together. Talk about what you learned in that time. Because sometimes people in those years.
Yeah, because I spent 3 years as a paraprofessional. And I knew that I wanted to teach, but I knew that I wasn't in a rush. Because for one, I had a lot to learn because I just spent 5 years wanting to be an electrical engineer, taking engineering classes and all that. But kind of that foundation also kind of gave me just being able to sit back for 3 years and kind of observe and understand and kind of make sense of stuff and kind of understand what it is to really be an educator, what it is to work in school, what it is to really care for this product, which is our little kiddos. So I really used those 3 years to kind of absorb, because I'm a really hands-on type of person. So I wanted to immerse myself for a certain amount of time before I felt like I could take over a classroom.
No, and I want to explain to people, as far as being a paraprofessional, even in other states, they're teachers assistants, but where it's valuable as a sped teacher being a paraprofessional is you are a bit more hands-on. You have a lot more to do with how the process flows. Now, honestly, in a gen ed classroom, you really don't even have paras half the time anymore. It's very rare. Now, it used to be when I was a
Unless it's a
kid.
kinder
Yes.
class, it's probably
So you can gain that hands-on experience. So if you say like you're gonna go into teaching and you're gonna try to be a paraprofessional before, it's like a lot of those positions don't even exist anymore, just because of budgets and so on and so forth. Because when I was a kid, there used to be a person like in every room. There always was a teacher's assistant in every room. But now, so you probably really could learn and then eventually get a job. But now, if you're saying, "Oh, I'm gonna go be a para in a 4th, 5th grade classroom," it don't work. So I just want to explain to those, just to be clear. Somebody's like, "Oh, I want to try that path," but those roles don't exist if you're just gonna do gen ed. Sped, that's different. All right, so let's talk about Kris, or Mr. Reece. I'm trying to.
Hey, either way, man, it's all good. Either
or
way.
Mr. Reece. So you got that first teaching job. Just talk about that experience of getting your first job as a teacher.
It was an amazing. First of all, I was so happy I passed my test. First shot, I was nervous about that.
Yeah, the sped
There was
test
also
is a beast.
Yeah, and there was an additional test that I had to prepare for, EC Generalist 4 through 8, and I didn't know about it until about 3 weeks until I had to take it. I think the district called me and said, "Hey, we need you to get certified here." So I was like, "Oh God." So first of all, I was so glad I can get past the certification, get those tests passed. And then just my mind ran wild. I was just excited with the opportunity to get the chance to lead my own classroom. They trusted me enough to give me these kiddos, and I just didn't want to let anybody down. But I was also nervous as all get out, because it was like, wow, now it's on me. So I had to step up to the plate. So I'm always one of those people who I don't shy away from challenges. So I just wanted to make sure that I could perform to the best I could. Now that first year, yeah, it was a rough year, but I think I had a really good set of pairs that kind of helped me get through that. And that's one thing that's important about working in special ed, or even more life skills, is that your paras really kind of dictate what kind of class you're gonna have. If you got, yeah, go ahead.
No, what I was going to ask is, I guess first finish what you're saying about paras, then I was going to ask, do you think your experience started working early on at the group home kind of help you developing that patience that it takes to start working on special education?
It did. It did. Working with those 9 grown men who were already, before I got there, already functioning, already had a schedule. I just needed to come in and connect with them, kind of get their trust and show, hey, man, I'm here to help you out so you can continue to live a life that you want. But I definitely developed kind of a sense of awareness and care for that population when I worked there. So it was only natural that, I went into that as a profession.
Yeah, so, and we were talking before we got on air about, I think you said you ended up doing kind of some experimental things during your time with that particular school district. So kind of tell me about like some of the things that y'all were doing at the time that you can talk about, I guess.
Yeah, I'll try to be as as general as I can. But my second year, the district approached me about starting a class with a strong kind of background in ABA. We had a BCBA who oversaw the program that the district had hired. Shout out to Miss Audra Hastings. I'll say her name. She works for, I think, Region 7 now, but she was our overseeing BCBA. We also had a contract with Sam Houston, I think it was SFA, that we had about 3 graduate assistants to come in and also help us manage data. We planned and met multiple times a week. And our data was really, really specific and minute because we were really taking some difficult kids and trying to completely turn their behaviors for the better.
Mm-hmm.
So through ABA tactics and a lot of direct instructional teaching and one-on-one, my parents were even trained, you know, to extensive, like they were really not, I don't even really look at them as parents. They were really extra teachers in my class because they were doing the same thing that I was doing because they had been trained so. But we really did some really good things, man. We changed some pretty aggressive behaviors. You know, we had individuals that was, you know, really injuring people. And we were able to, not only through just specific instructional things, but the care of everyone in that classroom. I think those kids really just needed to know that the people working with them
Mm-hmm.
really cared about them and they gained our trust. So we were able to really do some really good things.
So was the study able to get published or anything like that? Because it seems like it was some type of research study. Was it something that was ended up getting published or?
Well, I'm not sure if anything got published. You'd have to look through SFA because I think some of their students definitely wrote papers about the program because they were taking data. Like I said, we had a partnership with that school, so nothing specific that I know of, but I'm sure there's some research papers out there.
Now, I'm gonna guess that, and since your name might have got well known after this, and just for them to be interested in you, I mean, it would have been your second year, your name got well known. So was that kind of the case with that?
It did actually. Well, I don't want to say well known, but I when dealing with this class, I'd obtained quite a bit of knowledge in behavioral management and modification. So some of my supervisors in the district, they asked me to do a couple professional developments, and that was nerve wracking because I was like, oh my God, I'm only a second year teacher. Why
Right.
am I up here teaching other teachers? It's like, it shouldn't be happening. But, you know, like I said, I don't shy away from challenges.
Mm-hmm.
I may not seek them out all the time. They may fall into my lap or be presented to me, but I try not to shy away. So I took on the challenge. I think I did fairly well. You know, so I from that point, I was just, it kind of just built confidence in myself and hey, you know, I actually do know some things and I could probably actually help other people too.
So I guess it would have been your final year at that time in Tyler ISD. So talk about just
Well,
like that final year. It would have been your final year after that next year going to the high school level. They asked you to go to the high school level with those kids.
yeah, they did. A lot of my kids moved on to the high school level, and my class pretty much moved with them. I gained some other kiddos. We even went out kind of looking for or scouting out kids in the district that would
New talent.
be well suited for you. That would be that would benefit from our program
Right.
because there were some tough kiddos out there that may not have been getting what they needed at the time, and we had the resources to do it.
Mm-hmm.
So we went out and pulled in a couple more kiddos, and we went to the high school. And unfortunately, that was my last year because me and my wife and decided to move to Houston.
Mm-hmm.
So during that year, I also had to try to help, get another teacher acclimated to how to manage a program.
So it seems like it kind of smoothly transitions into, I mean, everything it sounds like you're talking about as far as the type of kiddos that you dealt with. It's pretty much the type of kids you definitely are going to deal with at the Carlton Center. And for those that don't know, I think at the time I worked there, I think they said the Carlton Center is one of the rare schools that's a special needs behavior school. You have alternative schools in most districts, but a special needs alternative school. So this is for kids that are classified as ID and are severe behavior issues. So just goes without saying it. I'm sure it prepared you for working at the Carlton, but what was just your first experience working at the Carlton and just that environment as compared to what you were doing already?
For me, going to the Carlton Center, first of all, they had to wait for me for a year, unfortunately. And shout out to Rhonda Turns for actually, she stayed in contact with me that whole year. So we were able to communicate. But during that time, I was able to take a couple tours of the campus. And I was just yeah, I was like a stealth. It was me and Craig in the hallway. But it was an amazing place. I was just like, you guys have all of this. Look at it. You have an apartment for them to practice in. You have a domestic lab. You have a full functioning, kitchen for these kids to come and work and train. And I was just amazed by it. I was like, I've got to be here. There is so much I can learn. There's so many things that we could do here that could be amazing. So my first year there, I was really excited just to kind of get to know everybody and learn the system. But it was the Carlton Center to me was like almost making it to the league. You know what I mean? Like you going from you going from college, like, okay, we got this resource and we pretty good, but I'm finna step up to a much larger district, a rare program in the state of Texas. And they selected me to be a teacher here. And it's only 15 or 16 teachers at the Carlton. So, and it's not for everyone. It's not for the faint of heart because it's quite it can be an intense environment, but it's also a magical environment.
Yeah, and I can attest to that. I worked there for 2 years myself, and I'm gonna get to like Mr. Reece coming in that second year, which my second year at the Carlton. But it is a very unique school, and I've been in a gen ed environment now for 4 years, and it's nothing like the same. But the thing about it, if you worked at the Carlton, you can work anywhere because you see so much stuff. And I think the things that I can just tell in a quick story of my first year. I remember we had a pass program, which I'm sure that person's gonna come very familiar with you. I don't know if they probably may call it something different in Tyler, but the behavior program, I know the kids would do things my first year, and the other teachers just couldn't deal. I'm like this is like was cursing or normal gen ed kids, even the bad ones only do certain stuff. These kids would be aggressive, right. They would curse, they would just do stuff that are just. I was like, And
that days you because you worked at the Carlton Center.
Yeah, and the thing about the crazy part, I probably did more. I had one particular student I ended up having to restrain him maybe 5 times in the span of. And I think that student ended up getting removed from my classroom in the first semester because our past department at the time, and I'm good friends with some of those people now, so I don't think they have a problem with it. We had some friction because I felt like some things weren't being done right. Because I said when I went into the gen ed environment, I wasn't going to be trying to restrain no kids and do any of that. So kind of like I didn't want to even get into that thing. But then I was like, man, they're not doing it. I have a kid being aggressive, throwing tables. And when I see stuff like that, when I was working at the Carlton, it wasn't a hesitation. You just acted. So eventually I was like, hey, I have to protect children. I can't be worried about, I won't say worrying about my job, but you have to worry about like protecting those kids. We seen kids fall over, kids crying, you just act. And you go back to your, in a sense, training that you did have. And honestly, it's a little different. A lot of the kids that do come to the Carlton, to those a school like that, normally they're going to be a little trend a little older. Because normally they're aggressive at the younger age. They're a little easier to handle. But once you get to 7th, 8th grade and they start growing, it's a little harder for people to handle them. So that's normally when they end up at a school like the Carlton with people that can actually handle their behaviors and know how to change them. So let's get back on task. So talk about that first year. One thing I just tell the people that are listening, when Mr. Reece came in, he kind of shifted the culture of the Carlton. I'm not talking about necessarily with the students. I would say like with the staff, as far as like what the school was my first year, there was some good teachers there, but it was a lot of, I feel like a lot of negativity and it wasn't a lot of cohesiveness. So he came in and kind of changed the culture a bit, and him and some other teachers of how the school was, just the overall school culture made it more cohesive. So Kris, talk about some of the things you did as a teacher coming in, essentially leading while you weren't in charge at that moment.
Well, I think the spark to that was one, I was so amazed with the whole building and all the resources that the Carlton Center had. But I did notice that there wasn't as much cohesiveness as I would think it should have been. And at the time, I was also starting my master's in educational administration. So I'm doing all this reading and researching and stuff like that. So I came up with the idea and I challenged myself. I was like, hey, you need to get to know everyone at this school. Okay. So a buddy of mine, Jonathan Canava, he had a really good idea. He was really into softball. And at the time, I was really trying to find some way to kind of get active. And at the time, I needed to drop some pounds. So I was like, man, I'm in. Let's play softball. So we started a team, and from that point, we started practicing and started playing. Jeremiah, you was on the team.
Yeah, I remember that.
We were
I was a little better than I was in Little League, but not much.
yeah. So we were all. Jonathan by far was the best player on our team.
Right.
But the rest of us, we were pretty novice. You know what I
Yes.
mean?
It was fun. I don't even think we won a game, if I'm not mistaken.
We did not win a game. We did tie. We tied one game, so that was a victory. But it was just fun to hang out with those people outside of the Carlton environment because, it is at the Carlton, sometimes it's really intense and you have to be on your P's and Q's and your situational awareness is higher in the building because of so many potential things that could happen. So it's just good to get to hang out with these people outside of that. So we can just cut loose and, have fun and stuff like that. So I think that really kind of showed everyone that, hey, this new guy who they had been hearing about a year before I got there was really kind of maybe, the real deal.
And, yeah. And I can speak to that. We did hear about him. I think maybe there was an initial staff trainers. I was new myself, and they said, hey, we're waiting on the guy. It was something with the contract, and he couldn't get out. And I was like, okay, they're still trying to see if they can get him here. And so we was hearing about him, and we're going to get into the principal at the school, RT. She's not the hype up type, or she don't have that type of personality about herself. So she's speaking about somebody and saying what they are, then she didn't go like, oh, he's great. But I mean, we figured if they were going through all that, it must have been a reason for it. So,
but I didn't come in and I didn't have that type of attitude because, like I said, I was so in amazement of what was already going on there. I was just really there to kind of learn. I learned so much from my coworkers, like, so many different ways and different strategies to use and just temperament, everything, a whole myriad of skills I picked up from just my coworkers at Carlton.
All right, so I guess you had already started your master's I guess that first year, and then going to the second year, I guess continuing with that program. Then at some point you started to you had to shadow run the turn, and just and even I learned my last year there. She kind of told me about her background. I mean, when you talk about experience, people talk about administrators and they only spent 4 years in the classroom. Like, you can't say that to her. She got receipts.
No.
She got receipts. Talking about a bevy of
she got boxes of them, man.
Classroom experience. I forgot what she did. Maybe it was an instructional specialist or anything like that. But as we were talking before the show, she was a superintendent. So just talk about just getting a chance to learn on a person like that. Even our coworkers probably had kind of some misconceptions and a lot of things out there about her.
And that was kind of a big thing for me because, like I said, just doing the master's while I was there, I was able to kind of, I had to do my practicums, and Rhonda supervised all of those. So me just getting to kind of know her, and I think a lot of people misunderstood her leadership style because first of all, she has a science background. Like myself, we both have bachelors of science. He was into psychology, mine was electrical engineering, but they're both sciences. So she had that approach like, hey, I want to make sure every decision I make is data-based and not so much emotionally based because of, the way of our school. Like we have to naturally deal with so many different types of emotions that, her approach was more so, okay, let's make sure our data is on point. We need to learn how to look at it, read it, and what is it telling us and how can we use it to manipulate. So I'm all about it coming from TISD, just coming from this program, like, yeah, let's do it. I want to learn as much as you want to teach me. So just her, and like I said, she has so much experience. Like she has taught for so many years. She was even a superintendent in California. So she has that level of knowledge when it comes to administration. So to me, during my practicum time, she was an immense resource. Just kind of getting to understand things. But I think a lot of our coworkers kind of, because she wasn't, the bubbly type. I know we talked about that on the panel.
I even heard the word ice queen.
But I'm gonna tell you this though, because I'm in my work environment, I like to keep it positive. I'm a half glass full type person. I don't want to walk around looking serious or mean all the time. So I want the work environment to be. So I think I kind of changed that a little bit before I
Rubbed
left.
off on her.
Like I rubbed off on her. She got to the point where she was cracking jokes and she was laughing during trainings and professional development, and I I would like to take some credit for that, but I don't want to take all the credit.
Now tell us about, like, I know even though I was a pair, the teachers used to always talk about how, and some even honestly left the school because they hated how ours turned into the Super Bowl pretty much. That's how a lot of them almost regarded that situation. So kind of tell us why she kind of, a lot of people felt like she take them a little bit too serious. Like her arts are like the word, if you, those that never had the pleasure of working for a Run the Turns, the word would be documentation. Is probably a word you'll get very familiar with. So talk about why she was just so serious about that.
Well, first of all, whether you call them a ARD or an IEP, because at TIZ they call them ARDs. I was like, I kept saying ARD, and it was like, what is the ARD? No, it's IEP. So whatever you say, they're basically the same meeting. But for one reason, she took them seriously because they were serious. I mean, this is a legal document that you have to follow, and you are legally bound to implement all of these strategies and resources to the student at a credible rate. So she took that very serious because, like I said, she has a scientific background. Her background and her education is in psychology, so that's all data driven. So she always wanted to make sure that everything that you spoke to, you could prove with documentation and data. So if you were not able to keep up with that demand, which is not a really huge demand, it's not. It's what you are supposed to do as a life skills teacher. But if you couldn't keep up with that, you didn't, you weren't going to make it, especially when it came to the IEP meetings, because she's going to lead them like a maestro, like someone conducting a symphony. That's how she handles her IEP meetings. Seriously, man, it's really a work of art. And I used to just sit back and watch, and the way she would cue you in to talk about the things you need to talk about. And you need to make sure that what you're talking about is actually what's on this paperwork and in this data and on these graphs. It was a work of art. And me, of course, going through my master's program, I'm really trying to absorb all of this. But the one thing people did say, when you left the Carlton Center and you went to another school, that you could go and run anybody's IEP meeting. Like there were some people that left Carlton, went to HISD, they went to Tomball, they went to Klein, and they were able to go in these IEP meetings and really, or even other Sci-Fair schools. Like if you go from the Carlton Center to another Sci-Fair school, you can come in there and really, really run an IEP meeting because Rhonda has embodied that in you. She was a stickler for that.
And I guess I see why now, like being a teacher, like of course academics, just like Mr. Gibson was saying on our panel on Sunday, he was kind of speaking to, like, he had all this documentation about the kids' academics, but that actually doesn't come up that often. Like academic stuff, I mean, it's rare. Like, you know what I'm saying? Especially a solid teacher, honestly. Like you very rarely have those issues. But when it comes to behavior, you deal with that the whole year, regardless of, for whatever reason. So you want to have, and I can honestly say I've been in a situation or two probably because I didn't properly document, or I didn't want to write up, or didn't want to do this. And then when it hit the fan, you're like there's documentation. Like, people don't look for those things. I've been there and I probably made that mistake, and I can see where an administrator is like, you didn't write them up. Because I've never been the write-up teacher, but you start to see why you need to have proof that this is going on. Because if you don't, you screwed, honestly. So, and if these things take it to the next level, now that I sit back, now, even though I was a pair at the Cardinal, I kind of can see why, especially when mainly all you're dealing with is mostly behavior. Yes, you're teaching them life skills at a school like the Carson Center, but it's behavior. So the stuff that kind of gets started. So even at my first school, when we had a past kid, you send a, texting about a kid, never add their name because it could be legally binding if you put their name or something. So I can see why now, like I said, if one, it is serious, but why you would turn it into the Super Bowl, because as soon as you start treating it like a preseason game, you you gonna end up losing, I
You
guess.
got you got 6 weeks. You got 6 weeks, and we had a schedule, and from 6 weeks out, each week you should have certain items done and turned in. So that was like the preseason game, man. Like, you would take those 6 weeks and you get ready. It was training camp, and then, like you said, IEP was ready to go.
Right.
And people that work around it, they already knew, like, diags and speech therapists and psych therapy, psych services and everything. They knew how she ran an IEP meeting. And it was known throughout the district. And even when she got invited to other schools to go scout out other kids, they knew that they better have their data right. And if they didn't, it's a wrap. Call me when you got this right, and we'll schedule another meeting.
I guess with her being a superintendent, I guess your mind kind of goes a bit more to that, because you're seeing it at the highest level. You have to be extremely professional. You're not allowed to say crazy stuff or diss quarterbacks or anything. Like, you're not allowed to do certain things, or you shouldn't
Man,
be
I'm
able to do
telling
your
you,
job.
I mean,
So
at
yeah,
that level, man, the buck absolutely stops with you. So your level of thinking and your awareness of things is way different.
like as
And
teachers,
that's
we do
and
just
that
think on our level. Like teachers, we just think on our level. Sometimes we don't think about like why things are being done or what's getting said. Because I mean, even within a classroom, there's been times that you might be responding a certain way to a kid because you're getting this complaint from this parent or this person saying this, or you send the meetings and they're talking about them this way. You're gonna respond a little different. It's hard not to.
yeah.
I can understand like administrators doing the same thing. All right, so we kind of belabored this point a little bit. So let's move on a little bit. So at that point, after you're getting your master's and spending a couple years at Carleton as a teacher, you end up accepting the behavior specialist role. So talk about just stepping into that role.
So, and to be honest, it was kind of like a plan B, but turned into a plan A. I wasn't for sure at the time that I wanted to stay at the Carlton Center, only because it was so far from me. So at the time, I was thinking, like, well, I don't know if I want to keep driving this far. But then our behavior specialist left, and just out of the blue, man, I was like, hey, if I'm really trying to gain the experience and knowledge like I want, let me just go ahead and fully immerse myself. So I went out for the job, you know, interviewed me twice, and it was kind of weird because I'm a teacher
You
there.
worked there twice for 3 years. I mean,
Right. So I'm getting interviewed twice. So I get the job, and I'm like, everything's cool, but it was a different level. Even seeing it from my practicum perspective, where I wasn't fully in the office every day, being in the office every day, your all your tasks and your schedule and just urgency and deadlines, they change because you no longer have to worry about kids. You have to manage kids and adults. So that perspective changed, and I had to almost kind of turn, like, if I were in the classroom, I would almost have to turn my kids now are my adults that I'm trying to teach. I'm
mm,
trying to lead. I'm trying to guide. So that first year, it was, man, I was just trying to make it. To be honest, I was trying to work as hard as I possibly could. I think I dropped several pounds because I was always out monitoring on the floor, watching, making sure things were running correctly. Um, and I mean, I would average about, I think I would walk 3 or 4 miles a day just around that square in the Carlton Center.
the invisible man.
Uh,
That's the and I mean, even as teachers, that's all. I mean, sometimes people get nervous by those things, but if you know the person is there to support, it actually helps. I mean, but
because
sometimes
yeah, I like I said, I would walk, and I would pop in and just, I would make sure I wouldn't, messing up any instructions, but I would pop in and just say, hey, and it wasn't always there for a behavioral issue. I was there to really,
mm,
talk to teachers, hang out with kids for a little bit. So I think a lot of that had to do with, and I think this may be one of your questions about kind of the culture change
mm-hmm.
at Carlton Center, because, being there as a teacher, they knew what my heart was as a teacher, and then me coming in as their behavior sports specialist, they really trusted me. So when I popped into that classroom, I was able to kind of really gain a lot of a good rapport with all of the kids, them, kind of got a good feel for what they were trying to do instructionally, and then just kind of seeing what I could do to support their kiddos behaviorally. And then once we established that, our restraint numbers went down to like the year before I took the job, they were up
It's a job for them to start
into
data.
yeah, and we use this a lot for our SIP data and stuff like that too. But we were up in the we would average about 100 to 120 restraints a year
I didn't
in
know it
that
was that
range.
high. I didn't realize it was that high.
It would go like I think the lowest while I was there was 96, but if you were I was out in all the CPOC meetings, so I got to see all this data.
Mm.
But it would go from like in the hundreds, and I think 96 was the lowest, and in 2 years it was like 110, and then maybe it humped up to 120. But my first year there, it dropped to 55,
Wow.
55 restraints
So numbers going
because
down, people at the Carlton is a good thing. I know most times you think teachers, 90%, but at the job, it's going to go the other way.
yeah, our numbers dropped, and I want to attribute it to because there was a culture change.
Mm.
There was a different way to look at how to manage behaviors. You didn't have to overreact because a person was having a bad day. And if you understand our kiddos and their needs and what their some of their disabilities are, you understand that they express a bad day differently, and they
Mm.
have come to learn over time that maybe if I do this physically, I can get what I want. Because
Mm.
inherently, everybody does things, especially when you're young.
Yeah.
We do things to manipulate to get what we want. So these kids will just learn that being aggressive has gotten me what I want. So we just kind of took a hands-off approach, man. Like we don't have to put our hands on these kids. Sometimes they just need to express it. Sometimes they just need to get it out, and we can be here for them afterwards once they get it out because we want to build a good rapport with them and let them know that we're not here to be aggressive with you. We're here to help you through whatever you got going on. So I think once everyone for the most part, everyone bought into that, that's when numbers started to drop. And I was always there trying to model how to react in a situation. This is based off my training from my CPI training and just kind of what I've learned over the years as a teacher having to deal with volatile behavior.
I would say like to someone that I end up having to get CPI trained almost every year as a regular teacher because sometimes I was involved in those situations like with the students because a lot of times they'll come get me because I did work at the Carlton Center or a place like that and I understood that dynamic. But I can still remember one specific, and you talk about maybe de-escalating situations instead of going in to restrain them or do anything like that. Have that as your go-to. But I can remember my first year I had to restrain a student 5 times, but my second year, I remember they Mr. Lye, oddly enough, it was a student in Mr. Lye's classroom, and they he was having an issue, and they asked me to come from my classroom, which is hindsight. I don't know if that was the wisest move for them to do, but they came and got me, and they said, "Well, you don't want to have CPI. You've been CPI trained. You know how to restrain." And I was like, So I went in there. I talked to the kid for like 20 minutes. I talked to him for a while. Talked to him. He got up and walked out, and that was that. Instead of going in there thinking like, and all he needed was somebody to talk to him and was random stuff and understanding like, you got to talk to him. Hey, can't get too close right now. He's not ready for all that. And just talk to him. I mean, he had cleared the room, so it wasn't like I was in there talking to him with other kids in there. He had cleared the room, and they were somewhere else. I got him to walk out, and that was that. You know what I'm saying? So
Yeah.
those methods, it's the same thing. And that's probably gonna be a segue, I guess, soon into your role now. I guess as a going into becoming an assistant principal, but so you say that first year y'all went down to 55 restraints, which essentially we're talking about numerically, that's about a 100 or 200% drop. So that second year, did you know at that point maybe you were ready to be an assistant principal just based off of some of the things you're able to accomplish early on as a behavior specialist?
Honestly, yeah, I did. I think I had gained the confidence. It may not have shown on the outwardly, but inside, I think I knew after I could survive that first year. I think I knew I had what it takes to really go into administration. But like I said, those numbers did drop, and I think they went up maybe by 10 or 13 more that next year. But like I said, we had got a lot of different kids in. Uh, so even still, I knew after that first year and getting Rhonda's stamp of approval, to be honest. Because, just like teachers have to go through their summative, administrators do too. Even Rhonda has to go through her own summative. She has a lot.
Mm-hmm.
So we all have to go and get evaluated. And when she gave my evaluation of that first year, of course, I'm always way harder on myself than others are, I think. I guess that's how I keep myself, not complacent and always wanting to do better and be better. But she gave me her stamp of approval. She was like, you really did a really good job this year. I know it was a hard transition, or difficult transition, because I think her big worry is me coming in as a teacher and how could I evolve my relationship with my coworkers into
Yeah, I imagine that'd be because Carlton is
that,
all
and
about
that,
relationship. Everybody, no, it's not a school where I mean, it's teachers. I'm gonna be honest. I think we had a staff meeting my first year, on my third year, at the end of my third year, and I didn't even know some of the teachers in the building. Like I really didn't. They was calling names. I was like, oh. Like anyway, back to what you said.
yeah. So at the Carlson, I think she was a little concerned about that, but I also knew and I understood that element before I even accepted the job. I knew that I would have to change just my relationship with some of my coworkers because I'm in a different role and I have to
You
be
get
a little bit
fired
more,
if they do stuff and you don't report it.
so there's a different level of responsibility that I had to consider. And I did. And, thankfully my coworkers really respected it. That's one thing I think I had from them was their respect. And they knew that they knew what I wanted. I was never secretive about it. I was like, hey, I do want to go into administration, even when people was like, why do you want to do that? I mean, it just feels like the natural next thing for me to do. But they respected that, and they actually, I think sometimes they would just make me look good, just because they respected me so much, and I'll forever thank them
That's
for
how
that.
kids are when they like their teacher. So yes.
Hey man, and when Rhonda would come in and do our 45-minute observation, and it could have been the day before. My kids have had a horrible day, but when it came to observation day, it just seems like okay.
Man, I've seen some kids and kids
inherently.
like you. I've seen some kids, even kids that turn up on the normal day. I'm like, this ain't the real you. Like, who is this person? Like
Yeah.
answering questions.
Mm-hmm.
So yeah,
Settle down, man.
I get what you're saying.
Yeah, yeah.
So how
So
is
yeah,
it? Well, I didn't mean to cut you off, but I was going,
no,
how
go
is
ahead.
it working for somebody like that that essentially has all those credentials, and working for someone like that can be a local band when you can't. I won't say it's not that you can't challenge them, but it's kind of like, hey, look, man, I got a resume. Like you can't really, as a person coming in that's pretty new to the game, that person's probably spent more years in classroom, more years in administrator that you've been a teacher. So how's it like working
Right.
on somebody with all that experience?
At first it was daunting, and I felt, especially my first year, I almost felt not, I wouldn't say inadequate, but I just didn't feel like I just, I was so inexperienced that I needed to just kind of be quiet and not really I just need to absorb and do and learn. But I would say that second year, um, I challenged myself, another challenge for myself to really step up to the plate and really carry my weight, because I looked at it like three pieces of a pie. And I wanted to make sure that I was at least supporting my portion of the responsibilities on that campus. So with that, I think Rhonda respects people who bust their butt and who are really hard workers and who really try. And it's not even so much if you make a mistake, if you own up to it and you do better and you change it, she really respects that. And I think I got a lot of her respect. So that allowed her to really kind of, I guess, seek some of my just some things that I thought, like ideas, staff type of things, scheduling things, she was really starting to lean on me a little bit more the second year. And it made me feel good because I knew of her experience that she was really kind of wanting to see what I was about. And I was like, that's so I didn't want to disappoint her. I'm not a person who, if you trust me and you've spoken up for me, I'm not going to make you think like, he's not this, he's not that. I'm going to hold my weight, you know.
Right.
Yeah.
And I guess we've kind of talked about of him coming to the Carleton. I guess essentially spent the last, I guess, 5 years now. At the Carleton was a couple years as a teacher, as a behavior specialist. Then just recently, Mr. Reece has been named assistant principal at Dixie High. At Dixie is it Elementary? Excuse me, Dixie Elementary. So talk about just getting that call. And I remember you telling me it was kind of somewhat unexpected to get the job at Dixie Elementary as an assistant principal.
It was, but like I said, sometimes I won't say I won't seek challenges, but sometimes challenges are placed in front of you. And that was one of the things that I got a call this summer. I was just out with the wife, and a good friend of mine called me and said, hey, there's potential opportunity. So I went for it. And a couple of weeks later, I participated in a panel interview. There was several schools there, so it could have been any school, but I got the call to go to Dixie Elementary, and I was very excited. I'm not gonna lie, I was ecstatic at the opportunity to get a chance to lead a campus, or at least assist in leading a campus. Like I said, I think I told you before, my principal is amazing.
Mm.
Like, she is a young phenom, and I am just excited to get to work with her. She's got some revolutionary ideas that we're going to try to get done.
Mm.
And I am excited to blaze that path with her. So, like I said, man, I am super excited. I was nervous. I'm always nervous. Like, I'm always hard on myself, but that's what drives me. I think that's what keeps me humble and my head down, ready to get in there and work hard. So, like I said, I'm really excited.
Mm.
Gonna do some things this year, even though with COVID looming. I think we have a good amount of support from our district, campus, teachers. Everybody's amazing, man. Seems like a perfect opportunity.
Well, just as you were kind of explaining it, I mean, as that person that likes to have all those innovative ideas and things like that, I know sometimes when you're that person, you kind of miss the details in between. You're just concerned with ideas, you get all the other little stuff. So I can say, I'm not saying she's that way, but it seems like what makes sense, bringing a person is great with behavior, definitely probably understands documentation. So like, wow, that person's doing all the fun.
Yeah, no, she's the all around talent, man. Like, she has those ideas because she's young. And I mean, no knock on anyone at a certain age, but she just has a good understanding for like young people. And I think that's critical as a leader of a school of young people. So yeah, that's critical. So she's the all around. She has the data, she has the knowledge, she has the experience. Um, I think she's been in education just as long as I have. So it's just to speak to that. I mean, or even longer. That was her major. That's what she went to school for. So, and like I said, I went in for a different reason and do alternative certification. So, like I said, man, she's the real deal, man.
I think y'all teachers definitely gonna start understanding what differentiation is. So, so how is that gonna be then, being an AP and essentially you dealt with behavior pretty much your whole career? How's that essentially as an assistant principal, other than being a disciplinarian, as you know, at most schools, you got to go in and judge instruction. So how would that be kind of an adjustment, considering in a sense you never had to adjust formal, not talking about reading, writing, and all of that. You've never had to formally judge that. How will that be?
Well, I don't think it will be a difference, but I don't think it'll be a horrible transition because inherently, like I said, my degree in electrical engineering, I'm about results, facts, and data. Okay,
Right.
it's part of my foundation. So, and then just combine it with, my love of kids and understanding relationships and understanding building those relationships and how you maintain your classroom, your your classroom management skills, all of that I've learned over these last several, however many years. So just having that in the back of my head, I don't think it'll be a hard transition to get to evaluate. Because like I said, I'm immersed. I mean, I'm the type of person that immerses myself in whatever direction I'm going in. So yeah, I don't think it'll be a huge transition, although it will be one. And I also like to look at myself as not so much a behavior background, but just a relationship builder. Like
Yes.
that's how I want to look at myself. Whether
As
it's with kids, teachers, other administrators, colleagues, being able to build relationships.
as I told people just earlier, I've been somebody considered pretty good with kid behavior and things like that. I was like, man, classroom management, man, you build a relationship with kids, you could have the foolishness more than that really half the time, most of the time. So that is very important. I love that you had that perspective about it. Instead, I think when people look at behavior, they kind of look at it like that person coming in and they're like, yeah, you're gonna.
Nah, it doesn't have to be like that.
That doesn't work. That doesn't work. Because I've been seeing it that way. Because sometimes I can be. I'm more demanding, but I'm not. Because I think like I can still remember one of my students. I got him my first year, and I remember he said his mom was like, "Yeah, you're gonna be this teacher. He's very strict and blah blah blah." And he said he got in my room. Like they realize I don't really be doing all that. Like they might see me getting crunk, but I might be getting crunk about work. It don't be about like behavior. I don't do all that for behavior. It'd be like really, you gonna do all that? Like, so it's kind of like that. I don't think people get that. That's the most important key thing with. I don't know if they don't watch too many movies and watch Lean on Me one too many times.
Joe Clark.
Yeah, but yeah, the thing about Joe Clark was all about relationships too. It seemed he had a tough style, but those kids at the end really rocked for him. I think people look at the style, but in a sense, he was all about relationships.
Yeah, I mean, he was in an extreme situation, so he had to come in with some extreme tactics. So.
Yes.
But like you said, it's any good leader. It doesn't matter if you're in education, if you are leading an organization, a company, group of people, church, whatever, man, those people have to trust you. And it comes from building a relationship.
Yeah.
You have to have that relationship trust. Yeah.
And just to speak about like John Maxwell, he talked about in his book, he talked about that 5 levels of leadership. He said the first level is permission. Like you gotta grant your permission. Because I know that some leaders they're almost incredulous to that permission. They're gonna do what I tell them. And as Miss Dixon in my last interview, she talked about that. You can't tell adults what to do.
And just to piggyback off that, I mean, I think some people kind of come in with that, I'm going to let my resume bully me in. But really, I mean, your resume is what got you a job, but it's not what's going to make you successful in your job. It's going to be what they see you do on the ground level. Are you going to come in and say, are you going to be visible? Are you going to be present? Are you just going to stay in your office and just behind closed doors and just dictate amongst people? You know, it's bigger than what your credentials are.
Well, I kind of think, and all that sometimes comes back to talent. And I think this guy Eric Thomas I listen to, I used to motivate my kids the past early in my career. He told me your talent gonna take you to a place your character can't keep you. And people see that. Because as we always know, a lot of the administrators, all of us had displeasure of working with early in our career. The thing you always go back to is not about someone may be talented, like you said, they get into those roles because they are talented. But then how they treat people, they do engage in misconduct, they do things they're not supposed to. Then people don't mess with you. And you can normally tell when an administrator is shaky, just how they communicate with you. You normally can tell there's just something wrong. And teachers talk about this stuff like, yeah, I don't know about this one. You don't show people grace. You're always getting on them about stuff. Like, so you writing up kids in the classroom and then they don't want to mess with you. How you think adults gonna react to it? Like, they're children, you know,
and
doing
I'm
something.
honest, man. What keeps me humble, I still draw on experiences when I was a paraprofessional. So that allows me to never forget where I came from and what I've been, and just understanding how I felt when I was in that position. Just if you can get a good understanding for the person that you're talking to and how they feel in their position, it makes communicating a lot easier.
It does. And I mean, that's the main thing. Just like building a relationship with kids, you kind of understand. Because there's been times I might have been too hard on a kid or something like that. Then you find out why. I can still remember this particular year. It ain't about mentioning a kid by name. I can remember it was a kid hadn't really been having any issues most of the year. and just start acting crazy. Like I was like, man, what is wrong with this kid? Like I was like, I just really didn't get it. Like I had no behavior issues. Then it was behavior issues. Then I was able to go to that kid's home, talk to the parent, and I found out what was going on. I was like, whoa. It was really serious, and it was like, wow, it kind of understand. So, and it was tough, and that's where it's tough. Even I'm sure as an administrator, even as a teacher, I didn't really know how to respond to it because the kid was, misbehaving, and it was causing problems in the classroom. But then I'm gonna say the kid had a true legit reason, but at the same time, you're trying to balance out that with the fact that you got 18, 19 other kids in the classroom. So how do you balance that out? So the same way I know as an administrator, you might have a teacher that's going through something for whatever reason, and then it's affecting everyone else. I mean, hopefully they're not, talking crazy or mistreating others, but at the same time, it's affecting others. So how do you balance that out? So I'm sure that's a challenge for everyone, no matter what your role is.
Oh yeah, definitely.
Yeah. So I guess kind of the end. I like to end with a lesson, a theme. So to anyone out there that's kind of like essentially want to switch career paths, like you went from electrical engineering, catching the teaching bug. So what would you give advice to anyone who kind of wants to make that career switch and go from, one career to the next? I mean, you've kind of in a sense accelerated fairly quickly, in a sense, but what advice would you give to that person if, they decide to take that route?
Well, first of all, I would definitely, that person would definitely need to just have a real serious conversation with themselves, I guess, or meditate or pray, whatever you feel you need to do. Just really just get into a quiet spot and really think about, does it make me happy at the end of the day? Am I smiling when I come home or am I upset? Because this is how I knew that I wanted to go into education, or I wanted to at least work with the special ed community, is because when I got that job at that group home, it was the first job I ever had that I wasn't angry coming home. Even though there had been a series of crazy events and it may have been a wild day, when I went home, I was like happy. Like I wasn't upset with what I was doing. I may not have been making the money that I wanted to make, but I wasn't upset with it. So when you get ready to, or you're thinking about making a career switch with whatever it is, and I employ young men to get into education, um, especially minority men, because we're needed. We're
Very
definitely
much so.
needed. But when you get ready to make the decision, really sit down with yourself and decide that that's what you want to do. And if that's what you want to do, you need to take every step possible to progress towards that. And it's not going to be easy. It's not going to, because there was a time, man, I can remember I was a paraprofessional working at Walmart mopping floors with a bachelor's degree in electrical engineering. So if that's not humbling, but just understand that you're gonna have to kind of humble yourself if you're gonna make a career switch, especially if you had saw some success in this area. But just know that whatever it is, you really have to have a serious sit down with yourself to make sure that that's what you really want to do. Because for me, I realized that making a lot of money was not going to make me happy.
Mm-hmm.
Doing what I love is what's going to make me happy.
And
And working with young people, being an educator, that makes me happy. That fulfills, I think, what God has for me to do on this earth. So that.
and to end to those that are listening, that are going to be listening on YouTube, what Mr. Reece is kind of speaking to, like just being happy with what you're doing. Because honestly, becoming an educator, you're going to have to love doing what you do, because you're going to have these tough times. You can think about right now we're dealing with COVID, and I mean, it's a tough time for everybody. You have to love what you're going to do. Otherwise, it's going to make you not want to do it. Because I think I don't want people to think like teaching romanticize and think it's just your teacher going in there being happy and teaching you a concept. Is a lot of behind the scenes things that happen that make you not want to do it. Trust me. Mm-hmm. So a lot. So you have to really have a love for it, because that's what's going to sustain you. So I think Mr. Reece hit on a great point there. So those who want to switch careers and maybe think about teaching, understand what you really get into. And Mr. Gibson said the same thing. You have to be committed. You have to know this is what I want to do. Otherwise, it's gonna swallow you up quickly. Not even not a couple years into it. Probably the first year, you can I don't know about this. I've seen people leave pretty quick, because you realize So say you come in and you're a 4th or 5th grade teacher or one of those testing grades, you're teaching reading and math, you start talking about those star scores and your kids are getting that 40% or 30%, you're getting fussed at by administrators. I mean, it's real. It's very real. It's not a game. It's not a game. So go ahead.
No, I was just saying, nope, you're absolutely correct, man. You've got to know what you want to do. And
so
have a plan. Yeah.
So to the listeners, you've been listening to Phenomenal Conversations with Mr. Short, and I have Mr. Reece. I'd like to tell y'all he's I think, a up and coming administrator. I've known it probably from the moment I've known him. That's why we always kind of stayed in touch. He's somebody that's given me a lot of great advice through the years, and I think he's somebody a lot of people don't know about him, but I think they will know about him soon. I'm sure he's gonna learn a lot. I don't know what your principal's name is. I mean, she's considered a rock star. I think he'll learn a lot from her, obviously. But I think you're gonna be hearing his name, not even kind of soon, probably very soon, in the near future. So I would think this is a name you probably want to earmark. He doesn't have a baseball card, but I think you probably want to make sure you watch this interview.
Hey, don't not have my words, man. I'm just a humble servant, brother. That's all I am.
So I just want to thank y'all for listening. And this has been another episode of the Phenomenal Conversation with Mr. Short, Mr. Reece. Peace. See y'all later. Thank you.
Appreciate it.